Please note that this hearing is televised. This is a public meeting. You're encouraged to speak up, to present a line of reasoning, support a position, or to pose and answer a question. Please step up to the microphone and state your name, address, relationship to the project for the record. Please focus your comments on the applicable guidelines, codes, and statutes, as well as the project at hand. In the interest of time, avoid repeating the comments of others, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes unless you are one of the applicants or an elected official. Also, pursuant to the provisions of 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County via statutory writ of certiorari. You're advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. First, do I have a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the first thing is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. And at this time, 1107 Chapel Avenue will be removed from the consent agenda and moved to the regular agenda. Is there anything else from the audience? Okay. Staff.
Okay, with the removal of that item, there are 9 items on today's consent agenda. 1401 Dallas Avenue, an application for new construction of an addition. 1700 Eastland Avenue, it's an application to construct a new detached accessory dwelling unit. 520 Fairfax is an application for an accessory structure with reduced setbacks. 2001 18th Avenue South is an application for construction of a new rear addition. 1313 Gartland Avenue, an application for new construction of additions, rear addition and dormer. 3620 Westbrook Avenue, an application to construct a rear addition. 2706 Belmont Avenue, application to construct a new addition with reduced setback. 1410 Gale Lane, application for new construction of an addition and demolition of 2 accessory structures. 1302 Shelby Avenue, an application for a new accessory structure with reduced rear setback. And those are all 9 items.
Okay.
Staff has reviewed each individually and found them to meet their respective design guidelines and recommends approval.
Okay. Any questions to staff? Okay. If that's so, I'll close that. Any discussion amongst the board members by any of these? Okay. All in favor of approving the consent agenda? First, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay.
Approval.
Second?
Thanks.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Consent agenda is approved. One thing that was brought to my attention, I forgot last month because she was here, but Rose Cantrell is one of our new members. She's official now, though, so welcome to the party. All right. We're going to start new business now. 1614 Benjamin Street is off of the agenda, so we're going to start with 1107 Chapel Avenue.
For this project, the applicant proposes to demolish 2 non-historic buildings on the site and construct a modular building in 2 different phases. The first half of the building would be constructed in 2013, obviously, and the second half would be attached in 2014. The project will require a reduction of 50-foot setback from the residential property lines required of middle schools. Staff did issue a permit for some minor alterations to the existing historic structure, which I'll tell you a little bit about at the end. Also, on December 6th, they went through BZA to get approval of a reduction of lot size for middle schools that's required, a partial variance from the sidewalk ordinance, and again, the change of that 50-foot setback that's required. The accessory buildings that will need to be demolished do not meet the period of significance, which is 1875 to 1930. They're not character-defining features of the district, and therefore staff finds demolition to be appropriate. This drawing shows both phases. That's actually two different buildings. And the project meets the design guidelines in terms of height, materials, roof shape, proportion and rhythm of openings, and location of mechanicals. Typically, outbuildings are located towards the rear of a lot and close to the property line, as they're proposing here. This building meets section H2 as it's located in the rear corner. Again, it does not meet that bulk zoning requirement of 50 feet from a residential lot line, but the proposed setbacks were approved by the BZA. The MHCC still has the ability, you still have the ability, to set the setback requirements for this property. The applicant proposes a 12-foot setback from the interior lot line and a 32-foot setback from the rear property line. And because outbuildings were typically at the rear of the lot, because there's no rear alley, and because this location will have at least the least visible impact on the neighborhood in terms of what's seen from the street, staff finds that the project meets the design guidelines. So in summary, staff recommends approval of the proposed demolition of non-contributing outbuildings, construction of the modular building in two phases, and the requested setback reduction, with the condition that the modular buildings only be in place for 10 years, which is also a condition that the BZA put on their approval. And with those conditions met, staff finds that the project meets the design guidelines. You have received 152 emails in favor of the project and one against. This, on this image, just to give you an idea of some of the things that were approved on the staff level, on this side of the sanctuary, there'll be two entrances at the basement level where there are now windows. This entrance will change just a little bit. They'll change out the door and add a new porch floor and steps and railings. They're adding some new ramps and entrances in existing entrance locations on this side, which is the side facing chapel. And on the back side, they're going to be moving some mechanicals from the side to the back and adding the fire escape back here. And the applicant is here if you should have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to staff?
Robin, what was the negative response to this?
I'm concerned about the location being close to the property line. And they may be here and so may be able to say more about that.
And just for clarification, we're approving or asked to approve the modular building only today, or the other improvements to the existing structures as well?
The other improvements we were able to approve on the staff level.
Okay.
But I just wanted to give you a clear picture of the whole project.
Great, thank you.
And we're also approving the demolition as well, right?
Yes, the demolition of the two existing buildings and the construction of the two modulars.
Okay.
Robin, we ran into a situation, I guess, just from timing on a previous modular project that came before this commission, where there were just some coordination issues, which is not uncommon, but certainly undesirable. An undesirable result for all parties at the end. Is this modular building, in terms of elevations, is that another step, and is that something that staff will handle, or am I not paying enough attention here?
The materials meet the guidelines. They're going to use a hardy siding. The windows are a metal and meet the proportion of historic windows.
They can use a smooth hardy siding, correct?
Yes, the smooth siding. They're well aware of that. The roof shape is similar to what you've seen in the neighborhood for accessory buildings, so we felt like everything did meet the guidelines.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Is the the applicant here and like to speak before the commission? You can just go, well, that's okay. I guess you're set up there fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, I guess. Just state your name and address.
And you may need this, your pictures.
Okay, oh, great, thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to come before you. My name is Wood Caldwell, and I represent the school, Liberty Collegiate Academy. I'm one of the original founding board members. This is our third year, or second year in school. With the school, we've been very successful. I don't know whether y'all have heard much about Liberty Collegiate Academy. Our principal is in the audience, Linda Lentz. Can ask any questions. I know that's not part of what we're presenting, but we've been very successful in what we're doing in meeting our mission. I'll let these two guys go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll make our presentation.
John Gore with Barge Cawthon Associates at 1212 Fatherland Street.
Craig Kennedy, EOA Architects, 1432 Greenwood Avenue. I'm the architect.
We currently, Liberty Collegiate Academy is currently located at 10th and Farlowen, and we opened there in 2011 with a 5th grade, then added a 6th grade 2012 this year. Our plans for this campus is that we would move the 5th and 6th grade to this campus and then start a 7th grade in 2013, and then start a 8th grade in 2014. The thing that's really exciting about this opportunity for us is that we are currently in a temporary location, and this would be our home at least for our 5th through 8th grade, which really gets us excited, and we're right in the middle of the area that we were authorized by the school board to represent. Our proposal is to move in July of 2013 as we go forward with this. As y'all been told or presented, that we got Board of Zoning Appeals approval based on some of the same issues. We have had, I know that I've read the letter of concern, and I will say we have had numerous meetings with the neighbors. First of all, we had an open house meeting that was a requirement by the BZA. It was the Thursday after Thanksgiving. I know there was some concern, people saying we weren't all back from the holiday, but we had it there at the church. We got a lot of really good response from that, which we've incorporated. One is not having, as what we did at 10th and Follow, we got a white modular building, and we're going to be painting it to blend in more. And Mr. Mosley, yes, we are going to use the smooth siding. And sorry for that hiccup at 10th and Follow. We also had our presentation at the BZA, and then we had follow-up meetings with the Eastwood neighborhood that was also represented by Rediscover East on December 11th. So that was a follow-up meeting based on some of the comments about traffic, which aren't even part of what we're presenting here. We have been given approval by Metro Traffic. And then we've got numerous letters of support. I think you just heard we had 152 either letters or emails about supporting, obviously. And then we've got actually some folks, everybody that's here that's for this, please raise your hand. We got some folks, a lot of those are parents that are representing us. Yeah, that's one, Axon West back there is also, he's on our board. That's really bad. So we've had those meetings, and you've got letters in your package from Eastwood Neighborhood Association that was for this. That was written by Brent Weathers, and then Council Westerholm, who is not able to be here in support of this. He was at the BZA and made a presentation of his support as well. And then also a letter from Rediscover East that was supporting it. One of the things that was of concern was the potential traffic, and although we got approval by the traffic Metro Traffic, is that we would, as we open the school, and we had a full traffic plan on how we're handling buses as well as car pickup with our children, that we would look at that and make sure we're doing that appropriately. And if it could become more efficient or less impact to the neighborhood, we would change that based on that ongoing process, which is what we've done at Follow-On, and it's been very successful there. So I'm going to turn it over now to John Gore to talk about some of the site issues, and then Craig to talk about the architectural issues, and we're open for any questions. Thank you.
Can you switch to the site plan? I appreciate the chance to be here today. My name is John Gore. I'm with Barge Cawthon Civil Engineers, and I'll just talk real quickly through the site plan, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. As you can see, this parcel is located on the corner of Greenwood and Chapel. The existing building is there, is shown in white. As everybody discussed, it's to remain. There's an existing parking lot to the south of the existing church building that's to remain. We are going to add a couple of spaces there to make sure that we meet our code required parking count. As was stated, we did go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This use is allowed in the zoning permitted with conditions, and there was 2 conditions that we went to see the Board of Zoning Appeals to ask for variances on. The first was minimum lot size. A middle school is normally required to be on 5 acres plus kind of an incremental addition per students, and this parcel was 3.27 acres, but we discussed it with the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I think that everybody felt like that there was ample space to have a layout that will flow well and will work well for both the students and also for the neighbors. As was discussed, the second variance we asked for was a rear setback, and that was studied, and I think based on the buffering that we're providing, the height of the modular, the irregular shape of the lot, some grade issues that we have on the lot, as you kind of move north towards Greenwood, the site starts to slope pretty dramatically down to Greenwood. So a modular building doesn't work very well with stepping or dealing with slope changes. So this really worked out to be the best location we felt like on site. So as Wood said, we've also studied the traffic. We've had a traffic and parking study that was submitted to Public Works. In general, the concept is that the frontage, there's parallel parking on Greenwood and on Chapel. And the frontage on Chapel is going to be used for student drop-off, and then there's enough spaces on the site to be used for the staff parking, some ADA parking that we're adding, and then also that's our plan. There's a driveway, I don't know if you can see it on the site plan that you have, but there's a driveway that goes south of the building, and then it kind of works its way out to Greenwood, and that is our location to route the buses that are used for the school. Approximately 60 to 70% of the students that come to school ride the bus, and like I say, and the remainder are usually dropped off with parents. There's some walkers, but we've studied this, and RPM traffic consultants have helped us do a report that was submitted to Public Works that addresses that. Let's see, the last issue that I can, let's see, is there anything else from the Board of Zoning Appeals that we talked about? I'll let Craig discuss the building and the
One of the
setback
things I want to
modular.
add was, in this, Wendy may have corrected this in her notes, but when I review the first notes, and originally we were asking for a variance on sidewalks along Greenwood before the Board of Zoning Appeals, but we have now have agreed to, we provide sidewalks all on the frontage of our property as proposed by the Metro Public Works. So that was no longer a variance issue. So I don't know whether, Robin, you changed that in your notes or not. Okay.
That's correct, and actually right now there's both frontages have head-on parking that was built some years ago, but Metro Public Works feels that they don't approve head-on parking off of the street like that anymore for safety issues, so that's one improvement that this project is making. We're converting all the head-on spaces on Greenwood and Chapel to parallel parking spaces and adding sidewalks to kind of connect the gap that exists in the sidewalk network.
Yeah, and really just to look at the site plan as far as how we arrived at the location for the modular, our main intent was to get it, like Robin pointed out, as far back into the back of the property as possible. It actually sits behind the parsonage, which kind of further obstructs it from Greenwood. We just felt like from a neighborhood standpoint that would be the most preferable, and then in meeting with Historic that they followed along that same principle. The other thing is like John mentioned, this part of the site is relatively flat, which we need for a modular structure like this. There are some large trees that we're trying to work around just on the northwest corner, just to the left of the modular northwest corner. There's about a 42-inch oak tree that we're trying to miss there as well. So that, again, sort of starts to push the modular, closer to that property line, but also in trying to get it as far back into that notch as possible. We're happy to answer any questions about materials. I think, those have been sort of gone through as far as what that's going to be, but any other concerns, we're happy to listen and answer those questions.
Just a quick one, and this is really more for your benefit than it is a tremendous concern. The drawings call for, I'd heard in the presentation something about metal windows in the drawings. There's a note on the drawings about vinyl windows, and again, with the, we don't want to get hung up on.
Yes.
We corrected that, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
We made our mistakes on 10th.
Well, it's an unfortunate situation that you find yourself in, and I think, or at least in the past, on previous buildings, there's an understanding of what a modular building is, what it's used for, why it's necessary. But it helps just to make sure we're all on the same page, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What can you tell us, just for the record again, your hardships when you went to BZA, the regular safety?
Yeah. The hardships, topography, this part of the site is the flattest part. If we push further north, grade between the two buildings, between the parsonage and the existing church, starts to fall off pretty significantly down to Greenwood. You also have some mature trees there in that center part that we really wanted to sort of preserve in this process. And then just that modular location being, this wasn't as much for BZA, but for historic, being subordinate to the historic church building and be as far back into the site as possible.
Richard, why grade's such an issue is because modular is obviously it's all one floor, and there can only be about a 2.5-foot grade differential between one end to the other.
And you got an irregular shaped lot.
That's correct.
Yes.
For me to be clear, the parsonage, is it to remain? It's under another permit, so it will not be demolished?
No. It will be renovated for staff offices.
And what is the grade change on the site?
It's about
from coast to coast?
12 feet from the south edge of the site down to Greenwood.
I also want to iterate. Now, you had a time limit that you had come up with BZA as well, and that was 10 years?
That's correct.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have one, please. Please. In regards to the neighboring property, I think I'm getting to understand how close this building is going to be to the rear lots of your neighbors. And I do see your buffering. I don't see much information about it. Can you expand on it just a little bit, please?
Sure. That's from a code perspective, it's a B buffer. It's the B3 buffer, which is the one without the fence. I didn't bring the final landscape construction documents, but it is a code B buffer. That's what the zoning ordinance requires. A school building.
Trees.
A mixture of canopy trees, understory trees, and shrubs. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Well, also, let me add to that. The modular project will be built in 2 phases. 7th grade starting in 2013, 8th grade added, so it's going actually south. But we're going to plant the buffer in the first phase for the entire buffer, so it will be there. And there's the tree row or the property line, there's an existing tree row that's pretty heavy. So we've even we'll be removing some of that's on our property, but some of the specimen trees will be remaining. We'll be planting around that. The gentleman that wrote the letter is actually at the corner. He's actually not right behind us, but he's right at the corner.
His property abuts, I don't know if this has a laser, but his property abuts is right there.
Yeah.
Sort of.
But we are planting that buffer at the first phase, so that second phase will have a chance to mature.
Is that the front of his property that's facing, where you put the laser?
Yeah. No, that'd be the back corner of his lot. His house is kind of in here, either faces Matthews or Sharp. I'm not sure which direction he faces.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. 10 years seems like a long way away, but I think, I guess my question is, have you all begun working on a master plan for replacement of the modular and a capital campaign? And I think I may have questions for our legal counsel in a few minutes, but the concern I know, with the time limit is, that 9 years from now, we're going to be faced with an extension of that if there's not a plan and working toward a campaign to raise the funds for capital improvements. Could you address that?
Yeah. At this time, we haven't been contracted or asked to do a master plan for this, but we have made, just in sort of looking out to the future, and actually I have plans for the building here. If it's fine to pass out, I could do that. But we have two hallways that are going in that feed out into this space for future. We haven't designed anything for that, but I mean, intuitively, we feel like on this site, that's where the addition would occur. We also have a hallway coming out the south end of the building down here. So, I mean, that's a possibility as well. So, I mean, we have three outlets essentially to the open sides of the site that, you know, could be utilized in the future. But, I mean, at this time, there's not master plan, not construction drawings, anything for that.
I want to address that issue. Obviously, one of the biggest hardships for charter schools is finding facilities. We're not able to use existing metro public schools. So we are given, the burden we have is that we have to go find our own locations. Obviously, this fits us perfectly for a permanent campus for our 5th through 8th grade. We are having to provide funding for about $2.5 million approximately. So obviously part of our ongoing process will have a capital campaign. Liberty Collegiate's in its 2nd year. We have to create a track record that says we're doing the thing that we said we would do for our scholars, and we're doing that. I'm very proud to say we're doing that and accomplishing that. But our goal is to do that master plan. Create an opportunity to add the 7th and 8th grade as part of that structure, and then we'd be back to you guys in presenting that. We would also probably want to be adding more program space, but at this point, we're somewhat under the gun, and then also financially strapped about how much we can do with facilities. Obviously, the modular really meets a need for us. I don't know whether y'all have been in a modular lately, but we'd be glad for you to come tour the one we have at 10th and following. It's not a portable building. It's different than what's on Metro Schools campuses. It's a totally different facility. When you walk into it, it's very sound. It's been designed for high wind loads, all those kind of things. But to answer your question directly, that's not our goal. We don't want to be in a modular. We don't want our scholars to be in a modular. So our goal is to eventually, yes, be able to raise the kind of funds, but we're just not at that point yet. But anyway, I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to open public hearing at this time. If you would like to speak for or against, just come to the podium and remember to state your name and your address. And what is it? 3 minutes, right? 2 minutes? Okay, 2 minutes. And Sean will be your timekeeper. Does anyone want to come?
Move close public hearing.
Okay. Is approved. Discussion?
One of the things that's significant to me in the correspondence we did receive is that the neighborhood association has met and had opportunity to kind of vet this out, and it's not lost that this type of structure in the neighborhood fabric is something that is not uncommon throughout Nashville, and a neighborhood school is certainly a desirable thing for many reasons. And an adaptive reuse of this type of structure, the kinds of things that can go in there in this neighborhood, or that are desirable in this proximity to neighborhoods, this seems like a really good fit, and I commend the applicants for hopefully finding a home. So that's all I can say about that.
I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Any other comments first? Okay. Let's get one more discussion here.
Well, first of all, I'm excited about the school being in my neighborhood, but I do have a question, maybe just for our legal counsel to just remind us the 10-year temporary condition. If we get to the 10 years and the school is still occupied, or the modular building is still occupied, what action would Metro take?
If it gets to the 10 years and the modular is still occupied and has not been removed or dealt with in a manner that's consistent with the board's direction, then technically it would be in violation of its permit. So what could happen is there are a number of things that could happen. Sometimes what happens when there's a board or commission that is issuing a permit, such as this one, the the board may choose to hold a show cause hearing to find out exactly what went into the decision to not comply with the permit. That's one option. Another option is that they might be cited by the codes department for operating in violation of the permit, and the codes department would work in conjunction with the Historic Zoning Commission staff to work the warrant or the citation to issue to them. And in that case, it would go to environmental court for prosecution for being in violation of the permit. So that would be the route.
So there's not any kind of statute of limitations in terms of grandfathered uses or grandfathered use of structures?
It wouldn't be for this because this is specifically tied to the permit that they're receiving. It's a condition of the permit. So for this, it wouldn't be like a non-conforming use where you have a zoning change later for a previously approved, properly permitted commercial activity under a prior zoning code. It would be a different analysis. So it would be, they wouldn't have that kind of protection for this.
Great, thank you.
All right, Richard.
I'd like to move approval, please, based on staff recommendations. Those include demolition of the non-contributing outbuildings, construction of the modular building in 2 phases, the requested setback reduction with the condition of the modular building only be in place for 10 years.
Second.
I'd like to further that by on the requested setback reduction. I think we ought to cite the hardship that they use for the BZA appeal, which was the topography and the irregular shaped lot.
Okay, we have a motion and proper second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, the next project is 301 Broadway and 105 3rd Avenue South.
Keep forgetting the mic. This project includes 2 different buildings, but they're going to be attached internally, so it's coming to you as one project. I'll give it just a minute.
If everyone could, if you're leaving, if you could just kind of quietly move to the foyer outside. Excuse me. If everyone could just, as you leave, just go into the foyer outside, we appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the whistle.
All right, this includes some changes to 105 3rd Avenue and a rooftop addition to the adjoining building facing Broadway. On 105 3rd Avenue, the applicant proposes to retain the original portions of the original facade that are left, but reconstruct the window openings. So you see on the right, it was enclosed at some point, and they're going to bring back those windows and those entrances. A rooftop addition is also planned for the shorter corner building at 301 Broadway. It includes multiple entrances cut into the adjoining historic buildings and a small covered stage area with a perimeter railing. The guidelines require that rooftop additions be set back from side elevations by 20 feet, and the proposed structure itself is set back 17 feet and 4 inches. The addition should set back from the front elevation by 30 feet, and the proposed structure is set back 29 feet and 7 inches. Because the structure portion of the addition does not have walls and should have a minimal visual impact on the district, staff finds that the setbacks are appropriate even though they are just a few inches off. Staff recommends that the structure not have permanent or temporary sides added without a permit, as has been required on other similar projects, and that it not have anything attached to the exterior portion of the structure. The addition of pedestrian garage doors do not meet the setback requirements. These doors are proposed to be cut into the side walls of 2 historic buildings which flank each side of it. And as these doors will be highly visible and detract from the historic character of the buildings and the district, staff recommends that all doors be moved to meet the setback requirements of the design guidelines. The railing is proposed at 3 feet, and in the past, for these types of conditions, the Commission has required at least 8 feet. Staff recommends that those railings be set back at least 8 feet. The proposed signage meets the design guidelines in terms of scale and location, with the exception that there's just one connection point at a decorative floret. The sign will be internally lit. In a recent case, the commission approved an internally lit sign if the background of the sign is opaque and is a solid color, but we don't have that information about the signage at this time. So staff recommends approval with the conditions that the sign connections not interfere with any decorative detailing, additional information about the face of the sign be submitted, all the doors to the addition be within the required setback area, the railing never have anything attached to it, the railing be set back a minimum of 8 feet from the walls of the building, the structure that's on top not have permanent or temporary walls added without an additional approved permit, and that the structure not have anything attached to it except for whatever items might be attached beneath towards the interior of the covered portion, such as lighting and speakers. With these conditions, staff finds the project to meet the applicable design guidelines. And the architect for the project is here if you have any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward and
Hey,
make a
Robin,
statement?
I'm sorry. When you said nothing could be hung or installed on the railings, what does that mean?
That's something that was done for the last 2 projects that are rooftop additions, and that's to prevent lighting and signage to be attached up there and draw attention, because the whole purpose of those setbacks is to make those rooftop additions the least visible as possible. So you don't want big banners hanging on them, lights stuck to them, Christmas lights strung on them, that type of thing, which is what we did run into with one violation. So for the other 2 rooftop additions that have been approved, that's been a condition.
Excuse me, Robin. Both of those additions, I'm trying to think in my mind's eye, would that be the Hard Rock addition and the one across the street by chance?
No, 104 Fifth Avenue, which used to be, Sean, help me with Wild Bill's, beignets and bikes.
Okay.
And Tootsie's, which has not been constructed yet.
Okay, thank you.
Robin, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to stay here.
Could you show us again on the elevations the issue that the staff has with item number 3, all doors to the addition be within the required setback area? And repeat what the required setback area is.
You can see 2 of the garage doors here, and that they don't meet that 30-foot setback from the front.
30 foot.
And then on the side, you can see that pedestrian is really close to the outside wall, and so doesn't meet the 20-foot requirement on the side. And they'll be highly visible. All 3 of the buildings that the doors are going to be cut into, and the building that this will be on top of, are all historic, all considered contributing, and never would have had this type of thing, stuck on the roof. So that was the purpose of that portion of the guidelines, was to keep that as invisible as possible. And they certainly never had garage doors on upper levels.
Along those, Hunter, if I might interject there, just with a curiosity or a question, the guidelines, all our guidelines specifically speak towards a opening of a certain proportion that is generally in keeping with, and I know the applicant hasn't proposed that, but is generally in keeping with the size and scale and the rhythm of solid and void. And I may be leading, I am leading, I guess, but I'm curious, just while we're talking about that is it that openings are discouraged entirely, or if an opening were more of a proportion or maybe more in fitting with the rhythm of openings on the existing building, that it might be more permissible? It's a question.
Well, I would say that on upper levels, the only real openings that would meet that portion of the guidelines would be windows. And in this case, you have doors and, as you're pointing out, very wide, very tall, vehicular-oriented doors that are on a second level.
If I may, Ben, I guess what I think that you're getting at there is that if these weren't called garage doors, if they had the same rhythm as the windows and could be an addition,
I'm just curious. Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, okay.
There is one door you can see on this drawing that's at the bottom of the drawing that's more of a pedestrian-oriented door, but it is still a door and not a window. And so we're maintaining that both should meet the setback requirements.
Okay. Thanks, Robin.
Thanks.
Okay, if you'd like to come forward now.
Thank you. My name's John Barnett. I'm the architect with B3 Studio. Our offices are at 1587 Mallory in Brentwood. While we're talking about the doors, I'd kind of like to interject and speak to how this design kind of came about with them located where they're at and the type of door that they are. The owner conveyed to me that really for a functional stage, the minimum size that we would like to propose is a 20 by 20 stage. So that's what we've shown. And we're pleased that the committee, even though that creeps outside of the setbacks a little bit, that they've recommended approval for that size. Really the location of the doors was based, starting at that point and working its way out. We're going to need, for code reasons, for egress reasons, we'll need a door on each side of the stage for egress. We'll need two ways off the roof. They don't need to be garage doors, but my client has asked that we propose that. He is not opposed to changing the type of the door to be more in fitting with the historical context, if that's allowable. But simply moving the doors, all of them within the setbacks, would put all of the doors on the stage. Which then would they'd be warranted useless as exit doors for the patrons out on top of the rooftop terrace. So that's where the doors that's how they materialize in the locations that they're at. I do believe that if we could compromise and continue to work on the design and find a solution, maybe we have just one door on each side of the stage. Maybe we can make them more fitting within the historical context of the buildings. My client would surely be open to that. But that's kind of why the doors were located in the location that they were at. It was simply a function of egress off the roof because people couldn't get onto the stage and then exit off the stage. The second topic or conditional approval that my clients had asked me to see if there was any lenience on is regarding the railing setback at 8 feet off the roof. The total square footprint of the rooftop is 1,850 square feet, so it's not a very big space. The stage itself is 400 square feet, roughly a fourth of that. The railings at 8 feet on the perimeter would subtract another 700 feet off of the rooftop. So with the stage and the railing offset combined, we're now left with less than half of the square footage that we had to start with. Obviously, he would just like to have as much room up there as he can. So that's why we proposed the 3 feet rather than the 8 feet. Otherwise, I think Robin did a good job just kind of explaining the scope of the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
With regard to egress, I think certainly there'll need to be two means, and as this doesn't appear, this is not a stage proper with the proscenium and curtain and all that kind of stuff. As a platform, and with distance requirements, my guess, I don't review these. I've seen it done before that you will need a minimum of two, push-operated standard hardware kind of in an emergency egress doors. So I think certainly a second opening I would guess would be required once you get kind of the final stamp of approval in that regard. And I would guess that would be to have this useful as a rooftop terrace. It would be exiting into the building along Broadway as opposed, since it appears to be one that will be on the building on the other avenue there. The other question I have is about the railing design. What's presented here, I imagine, is this design is kind of in process and
Sure.
Commercially at Bridgestone. So oftentimes there's this toss-up as to whether ladder effect railings are okay or not okay, and depending
Sure.
on who your reviewer is, and in the field, sometimes a reviewer versus in the field you'll get different different opinions there. I would, if in fact the design of the railing becomes an issue, that come back, at a minimum, that come back to the staff for review. If you find in process that what you design and or the owner would prefer is for some reason not going to fly, that the staff have the opportunity just before you get too far down that to fabrication, that would be reviewed at staff level.
Absolutely.
I have a question about the railing, too.
Yes, sir.
The way it's drawn, I guess that it is flat. This is the surface, so there's no parapet at all. Is that correct, the way this is? I'm assuming that's...
The bank building,
Yeah, on the bank building?
it's a very small parapet,
Okay.
4 or 6 inches,
All right.
probably.
So that's a 42-inch guardrail?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And really, the guardrail, I'm just showing it as a very simple, kind of minimalistic pipe rail with cable intermediates. That seems to be a lot of what's used down there right now, so that was a starting point. But I do agree with his sentiment that sometimes vertical intermediates make more sense in a project like this. And I'll be happy to do either.
Yeah. Well,
Sure.
like what can you say? You can go over it with staff. The cable is probably better because that will disappear a lot better. But
That was the thought, yes, sir.
I have a question. Have you met with the codes department?
No, sir. We've spoken with them, we've not met.
I guess my concern is that if this is a assembly space, or if it requires 2 exits, we or you are going to be in somewhat of a pickle with the design as it is currently, because the stage is less than 30 feet back from Broadway and less than 20 feet back from is that 3rd?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we can defer this or not, but it seems to me like we may be seeing this again, no matter how we rule tonight. If it's anticipated that another pedestrian door is going to need to be within this setback that is in violation of the guidelines.
I think the thought is that the garage doors would serve as the egress doors because during hours of operation they'd be open.
Not permitted.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not going to fly, I don't think.
I mean, not by that, but
Yeah.
I don't think you get traction with codes in my experience and in projects that I've seen, traction with codes is probably not there.
They won't. Yeah.
Really, as kind of a compromise to that, one simple solution is that the garage doors closest to the stage could become double egress doors, and the other doors could be omitted. It's tricky. We need to locate the doors. Like you said, if it's an assembly space, they need to be a certain distance apart from each other. They can't be too close to each other. So we need to have 2, but one needs to be on each side of the stage.
Well,
We don't have a determination from codes yet, so I'm hesitant to
I guess we
do
could.
anything but approve staff recommendation. Really,
Yeah, and just
on this
if
issue.
I don't, make the condition in the motion if we so desire to, if it it needs to come back to us if it's in the door or whatever.
Well, I suspect, if we approve staff recommendation tonight, it's going to really need to be rethought, because it's going to push any and all doors, or, any and all doors, both garage and pedestrian doors, into the stage area. And so it will likely come back to us anyways, I would assume, if it's not meeting the guidelines.
And I guess for that reason, to assist this applicant, and maybe I was looking back through to try and figure out where this starts, or what freedom does the applicant have within the guidelines that we could kind of move them to the next step of this. And Steph, can you clarify exactly, or can you confirm, it sounds like from your comments and reading it, would you confirm that the doors would be under this platform covering as the design exists now in terms of meeting the guidelines for additions?
If I understood your question correctly, yes, the doors, the whole thing other than the railing, would need to be set back 30 feet from the front and 20 feet from the side. And the railing would need to set back 8 feet because that is a condition that you have, that's what you've granted other people.
There may be another shape for the stage. I don't know. I'm not a musician. I don't know. But I do. There are some minimum code required distances that a shape, let's cut the radius out of it, that's a rectangle, will permit for this use on the roof. And so I think that the closer those get to the corner and the closer those get to each other, this use becomes impermissible, as it were. And I do think it will be viewed as an assembly use, but that remains to be seen when the applicant submits it to codes. And is, in terms of use issues, I guess that's not under our purview. I'm trying to move this applicant's request along, or anticipate, and perhaps it's not possible that we anticipate or can anticipate exactly what it's going to look like. But
I think my client's hope was that he would get approval or conditional approval just to make sure that what he's planning on doing in the structure is okay with this committee before we completed construction documents and sent them to codes. So that's why we haven't sent any drawings to codes yet. So it's kind of
they will
kind of
give you
backing
they will do a preliminary discussion with you that might be helpful. Just giving that advice. They will do that before you actually have to go through all construction documents, which might be beneficial for you in this situation, so you don't go down further down the road, and then they'll make you go all the way backwards. So they do allow that in Nashville.
Okay, and I think my client's concern was that we would go down that road and codes would tell us, which I'm pretty sure they will, that these exit doors will not be allowed to be on the stage. If they're built within the setbacks, all of those doors will be on top of the stage, and so they'll conform to those setback requirements, but then codes won't approve them as exit doors. So for them to be approved as exit doors from codes, they need to be off the stage. So one or the other, it's going to, for the project to move forward, it's going to be a give and take on one's part. I know that codes, obviously, they, for safety reasons, they need to be off the stage.
Is the stage raised? Is it actually going to be a platform?
It's just 1 foot. It's just a step.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since they're health safety, their safety and theirs is going to even overrule us as far as that is concerned. So it won't even matter if it's not going to meet them.
Well, it could. Is that correct? I mean, if we approve staff recommendation, but then codes comes back and says your doors have to be further apart, therefore there's no other physical way to do it but to put them within the setback, then they're just stuck, right? Because
unless they get a variance.
A code variance.
I don't think the code's not in the process of
No.
issuing variances.
But they can't violate the ruling of this commission in order to make a new project like this happen, a new use happen.
If it's a safety issue, they can certainly just come back to us and say, here's our concerns. Because obviously, as you said, we don't look at those issues, and I don't know the code requirements for that. And I know that the rooftop additions are very desirable, but there isn't anything that says everyone's allowed one. And if this stage has to be this size, and it just may not be possible here.
It kind of goes back, John, to what Hunter said a while ago. Actually, it's almost seems like I don't know. I can't tell you what to do, but to talk to codes, you have kind of the staff's information and understand what they're going to be looking for first, almost, to see how much further you can go, what route you can go forward with. That might be the better, something to look at before we make a decision, maybe. But
I can do that.
But if you don't want to go that route and you want us to make a decision, we will, but it might make better sense for you.
What are the implications for his application or permit if we make a decision tonight versus a deferral? Is there
Really not any. I mean, you can make a decision tonight and they can come forward with a new plan, or they can defer and come back with the same plan or a new plan next month.
That's up to you. We can't tell you to defer. It's up to you.
Okay.
If you want us to, that's what we were thinking. You want to get all your information, but that's your decision.
Okay.
I think as a just one more item for,
Yes, sir.
for discussion amongst the applicant said on more than one occasion, and I think the architect and the applicant that he represents is kind of looking for some direction on this and perhaps not vehement objection. And I think if the conditions, or the question to the commission, I think is, I'm not asking for approval without approving it, but I think to restate the applicant's question earlier is, assuming we meet, and I'll ask the question, assuming that the applicant can design a way to meet these concerns of staff, in general, the use applies, and the project could generally move forward. That we're not seeing something that is, and I think we've expressed those things today. But I guess to reiterate that, assuming the conditions of laid out here by staff are met, that there's not some other item that we need to discuss as a commission now that might help give some guidance to this applicant and architect.
Not that I know of. I think that's why I was like, these 7 conditions are good conditions to work with, and then knowing what codes would require, you seem like you have all the ingredients that you need to work with. But I don't know, someone else may have another opinion, but that's what.
No, I agree. I mean, given the application before us and the design before us, I think the conditions are good and right, and I'm prepared to approve those tonight. But I do have one. I mean, I don't know if this will be helpful or not, and we certainly can't say whether we would approve anything other than what's been put before us. But Robin, if there was a series of doors that were proportioned similar to windows within the setbacks, or let me start over. If they were proposing a series of windows within those setbacks, would that meet the guidelines?
Depending on their proportion and the rhythm, yes.
Okay, they could, a series of windows. So a series of doors, which, of course, from the street, you're not going to really see the bottom part of the door anyway. So, I mean, they'll probably look like a door rather than a window. But similarly, they could be proportioned like a window might be. Could that be acceptable? I mean, again, I don't want to put you on the spot as far as what
that would be a decision for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
To my mind, it would certainly depend on the rhythm. Need to have space between, like the windows do, and not be just a bunch of doors together.
Mm-hmm. So there may be opportunities to be able to meet the.
And my client is very flexible about that. I mean, we'd like to find something that works for everybody.
Okay. So do you have a preference whether would you like for us to defer it tonight or today, or go ahead and make a determination on it?
I think I'd like a determination if we could, and then I can come back and revisit it with the committee.
Amongst the commissioners, just doing a quick blush of some rectangular area, I think with a smaller stage, it is possible with this use to accomplish doors, outside of egress doors that would be required, and I think potentially would meet that distance requirement to come very close to meeting the setback requirements that are illustrated in the staff's recommendations. So it seems possible. Of course, there's lots of moving parts when it comes to a project like this, but a smaller stage would certainly be necessitated.
And you have your scale.
I made one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no more questions, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Any more discussion amongst commissioners?
We haven't asked for any public comment yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like to open public hearing? Does anyone in the audience like to speak about this project? Okay. Close public hearing. Okay. Any more discussion from commissioners?
Sorry, I just have one more comment, just so we're clear to the applicant, that with a new design that assuming there will be some new design at some point, it still has to meet the guidelines. It doesn't just have to meet the conditions laid out in this approval. It's still subject to all other guidelines. Is that correct? I just want to make sure that if you have to go back and redesign, that you're not just necessarily looking at these guidelines, but there may be others that apply, or these conditions, or maybe other parts of the guidelines that would apply. Thank you.
We might consider whoever makes the motion just that when they definitely has to come back to staff to review it after. So that'll
to staff or to the commission?
Well, it's to the staff first, and then if they feel like they can come back to us. But whoever wants to put that together as a motion.
Question, please, for Robin. I've been meaning to ask for several minutes now, the railing setback. Do we know what the minimum precedent is in Lower Broad for a railing setback on a roof? I'm going through my brain about rooftop decks, and honestly, that's something I can't picture in my mind's eye.
Well, rooftop decks aren't really historic, so
Right.
anything that's there would not really, anything that was there before the overlay would not set the precedent.
Okay.
The precedent that's been set by the commission is a minimum of 8 to 9 feet,
Okay. Railing.
the railing.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about setbacks, not stages, not doors, but the railing.
The 30/20 is very clear in the guidelines, and initially, the commission looked at everything needing to meet that, and then agreed that, well, the railings may not, be that visible, so 8 feet is enough. 8 or 9 feet is enough for them.
Okay.
Is what has happened in the past.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think as we set precedent as these come before us, we do that with trying to maintain some respect for the facade, and that the railings not appear to be, I guess, kind of getting back to Secretary of Interior standards, that if removed, it wouldn't, the building stands on its own, and that this piece is an added sort of thing afterwards. And so it's a balance of trying to get, well, and even this picture is a really good one from diagonally across the street. You just probably clip the top of that. The further it's set back, the closer it is, the more obtrusive it becomes. And so 8 feet.
I'm good with it. I just keep seeing a teenager topple over and take one too many flips. I was just curious.
Okay, are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval with staff conditions enumerated 1 through 7 in the staff recommendation on 301 Broadway at 301 Broadway and 105 3rd Avenue South, dated December 19th, with the as part of that motion, I think there potentially are some significant changes to the design, particularly with openings, and that if there were a member of the commission that might assist staff in helping to make that determination, so that the applicant wouldn't necessarily have to, if they met these conditions and met the guidelines, that there might be a member of the commission that could assist the staff in confirming that and allow the applicant to move forward with the project.
Okay, is there a motion and a second?
I'll second, but I'm a little more lenient on the doors / repetitive windows falling within the setback and not necessarily being required to be outside of them. I think there's some opportunities that Hunter mentioned that I don't think you would ever see the door, and I think it may appear as windows if done properly. And so I don't know if that's...
I think for clarity on that, I'm not sure I have necessarily a different opinion. I think for clarity, the staff's recommendations are based on the application as submitted, and that only doors are shown which are kind of part of the addition, and if there were other openings that were more in keeping with the established rhythm of openings on both these buildings, which look similar, that would be entertained at the time of resubmission of the application.
Do you want to say anything? Or? Okay, I think you need to make your second without the contingencies, just that you are seconded, or...
Second.
Okay. Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Motion carries with staff recommendations. Thank you very much.
That motion included someone to
Since I made it,
represent the
I'll
commission.
volunteer.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is 1112 Forest Avenue.
This will be the last case you hear in 2012. Right? Okay. You may recall that, let me start this. It's 1112 Forest Avenue, 1112 Forest Avenue. And you may recognize that address. The commission approved the demolition of a historic house at this address under the economic hardship provisions in the guidelines just last month. Before that, in June of this year, in addition to the house was approved, but the conditions of the house have turned out to be worse than expected, so then they came back with the demolition request. A detached garage was also approved along with the June addition, but construction on that has not yet started. So, following the demolition that was approved last month, which has not been done yet to my knowledge, the applicant is proposing to construct a new single-family house. The new house will be 1.5 stories tall with a side gabled roof and 2 front gabled dormers with a partial width recessed front porch. The form of the house will share similarities to a craftsman bungalow and a folk Victorian cottage, both of which are common house types in the area. The height and width and the overall massing of the house will be very similar to the previous, the house which will be demolished, with a very similar footprint and a very similar house form as well. The front setback and orientation will also match the previous house, and the other setbacks will maintain the rhythm established by houses in the historic context. The materials of the new house will be smooth face cement fiber clapboard and board and batten siding with cement fiber and wood trim. Wood will also be used for the front porch columns, porch floor, and steps. The primary roof will be a gray composite asphalt shingle with natural metal roof for the front porch and a rear dormer. The windows will be aluminum clad and the foundation will be a split-face concrete block. Staff finds these materials to be compatible with those of surrounding historic houses. Staff also finds the rhythm and proportion of windows to be compatible with that of historic houses as well. The outbuilding, a detached accessory building, is also being proposed. It's actually identical to the one that was approved with the addition in June. It's a 1-story, 2-car garage, matching the materials and character of the house. The setbacks and orientation are compatible and meet current bulk zoning regulations. As with the previous approval, more information is needed on the doors, but otherwise meets the outbuilding design guidelines. And staff recommends approval of the new house and detached accessory building with the condition that staff approves the door specifications prior to purchase and installation. Otherwise, staff finds the application to meet the Lockland Springs Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay Design Guidelines. And it looks like the applicant is here, if you have any questions.
Can you represent that the height of this proposed house is compatible with the height of adjacent building?
Yes, it's actually very comparable. I didn't put in a picture of the previous house, but it is. It's
Okay. Any more
23,
questions?
24 feet from floor, a couple feet for a foundation, very similar to the adjacent houses.
Is it the home that we spoke about a couple of meetings back that was so ridden by termites?
It is, it's that one.
Okay, any more questions, staff? All right, the applicant like to address the commission? Okay. All right, public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak about the project at all? Okay, close public hearing. Discussion?
I have a question. The dormers for new construction, do we not typically require the windows to fill the width of the dormer as best they can, given today's reasonable construction techniques?
We do, and actually, I asked that of the applicant. I don't believe you're seeing the first design. I think I asked for additional windows, and you may not be seeing the final design. There were 3 that were all very similar, and one of them and each time I kept asking for a little bit more window. And so it's something that the applicant's aware of, and I think it may be my mistake that I just didn't put in the picture that had the widest window openings in the dormers. But if you like, that certainly could be a condition that be added, that even more fenestration be added.
That's all I've got.
Okay, any more questions?
I'm good.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve staff recommendation with condition for the applicant to work with staff to maximize the width of the windows in the dormers.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, is there any other business?
There's not. Merry Christmas.
Did we hear 1614 Benjamin, or was that?
That was pulled.
Thank you. What's the being here for? Not this
All right, thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.
How'd she do?